Welcome to the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area. We're a special park along the Mississippi River, and the Mississippi River is a pretty special river in the United States. We represent the significance of the whole Mississippi River to the country, and we just happen to be lucky enough to have the coolest part of the Mississippi River right here in the Twin Cities.
Established in 1988, the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area is a 72-mile-long collection of parks and trails in the Twin Cities area. Beginning in the north in the small town of Dayton, the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area, or Mnrra, follows the Mississippi River through the metropolitan areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and ends in the south near the city of Hastings. The Mississippi National River and Recreation Area is unique in that it was the first of what the National Park System calls partnership parks. Unlike the majority of national parks, very little land is actually owned by the Mnrra. Instead, most of the land is actually owned and operated by other entities, such as local and state governments, businesses, educational institutions, and individuals. You may already be familiar with many of the parks, areas, and attractions within the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area, such as Fort Snelling, Harriet Island, Mill City Museum, St. Anthony Falls, Minnehaha Falls, and the Science Museum of Minnesota.
One of the most difficult things about our park is that we only own a small portion of it as federal lands. We're set up fundamentally as a partnership park, and so you have to be good at all kinds of relationships, and usually those are friendly. Sometimes they're adversarial, or sometimes they have to switch back and forth depending on what topic you're working on. And often they share our mission and views, and it's really a nice relationship, and that's the advantage of working here. But sometimes it's not as smooth as that. And you have to stand up for what you're trying to do while not making an enemy that's going to be fighting you for years and years on in the future too. One of the most successful partnerships that we're currently in the thick of is the Urban Wilderness Canoe Adventures program, and this is one that we've been developing with Wilderness Inquiry. We have always been working at getting kids on the water with our Big River Journey program on the paddle boats. And the opportunity came to develop a canoe-based program that would provide direct experience on the water for the kids too. It was a challenge because when you're taking kids out on the Mississippi River in a canoe, there's things that can go wrong.
The Mississippi National River and Recreation Area is home to many historical sites. These sites not only are important to the history of early European colonists, but also Native Americans as well. One such site is the Mississippi and Minnesota River confluence at the end of Pike Island. For the Dakota people, this site represented the center of Earth, where the Mother Earth gave birth to the ancestral grandmother and grandfather. Unfortunately, this important landmark is close to the site of a great tragedy experienced by the Dakota people as well. Following the Dakota conflict of 1862, nearly 1,600 Dakota were put in prison camp here, and many died during the course of the harsh winter. Today, this tragedy is recognized with a monument in the Fort Snelling State Park. After visiting the monument, visitors can explore the rest of the park by hiking, biking, and cross-country skiing. Another very important site within the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area is Coldwater Spring. The water flows from Coldwater Spring year-round and is considered to be sacred by the Dakota people. Acquired in 2010, Coldwater Spring is located between Minnehaha Falls and Fort Snelling, and is one of the only pieces of land within the Mnrra that is owned and operated by the National Park Service.
The land base that the park has was limited to just a few small islands until we added the Coldwater property here a couple of years ago. The land base for the National Park Service here was by design a very small number of islands. We weren't coming into the Twin Cities to put a fence around the cool parts and charge people to get in. It from the beginning was designed to have local jurisdiction and control over virtually all of the 154,000 acres in the park. We've got a 72-mile corridor here, and of that we really only own these little spots.
Often called the birthplace of Minnesota, Coldwater Spring was the location of Camp Coldwater, where the workers who were building Fort Snelling camped around 1820. Camp Coldwater continued to be a civilian settlement into the 1840s, when the first public school in Minnesota was built there. In 2011, the restoration of Coldwater Creek began, and it was opened for public use in 2012.
With the land acquisition comes a whole bunch of additional responsibilities, and again, without any additional budget, this is now having to take on law enforcement adjacent to the dog park. We have to take on the maintenance issues there. What do we do about plowing snow? There's all sorts of headaches that come when you own land that we didn't have to deal with when there was just those islands. So this has stretched us even thinner, but we just all work harder.
One easily overlooked park in the Mississippi National River and Recreation Area is the Upper Landing Park in St. Paul. This seemingly typical park actually has a very interesting story behind it. In the early 1900s, this area along the riverfront was home to Minnesota's poorest immigrant communities. During the Great Flood of 1965, the Mississippi River reached its highest historical crest on record at 26.4 feet. The small grassy mound in the middle of the park illustrates for park visitors just how high the water rose during that record-breaking flood.
National parks face a lot of challenges these days, not just because of the federal budget challenges and the ideas that we should be doing less with government, but also because of climate change and because of the many threats to natural systems that are in play with invasive species, with other stressors on natural areas. We are in good shape and improving shape with increasing numbers of eagles, with improved fish populations, but we're also facing major threats like the invading Asian carp and other invasive species, and some things that have not been regenerating at the rate we want them to, like cottonwood trees. So we've got kind of a paradox going on right now where it looks like things are great and improving, yet we're still quite nervous about other longer-term threats. We're also facing this challenge of engagement, that people don't necessarily think of going to a park as their first recreational activity anymore, and we're competing with a lot of media. We're also fighting what's a common misapprehension in an urban area, that the parks are somehow a Sherwood Forest and that it's so dangerous to go there, you're going to be mugged and hurt, and people lock their children up so they don't end up with these outdoor experiences. In a lot of ways we are doing this for the children, because we're here to protect these resources for future generations, and our biggest challenge here in the park is to take a very diverse audience that doesn't necessarily have a lot of cultural background with parks and engage them with their cool place. Yesterday, one of our rangers came in with a pack of letters from the kids from Como School who were out there last year as fifth graders, and I looked through that pack, and there was so much learning evidence in there. You could see that every single part of the program we did it connected to the kids, and they were drawing pictures of what it was like for them to skip the rocks across the Mississippi for the first time, and the one kid thanked us for making that nice nest for the eagles there. You know? So you've got all these wonderful experiences of a national park integrated right into the heart of a major metropolitan area. For the National Park Service, that's a special opportunity for us to reach out to urban audiences, to develop a new approach to a park that is really based on these partnerships and integrating into the city. And because we have such terrific local resources here, we can offer programs with our partners, and our partners offer programs in our park that are really world-class in a lot of different ways. So I invite you to get on the river with us, to come and explore our special places, to come and volunteer with us, and have a lot of fun exploring your national park.